Excuse me, Mr. Stern, before we move to courtesy of the floor, while we're still under the nominations, I have a clarification question I'd like to ask, if that's okay with you. Can I have the floor for a moment?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. So, with the committees that we just put together, specifically the Negotiation and Personnel Committee, it shows that you have an appointees of 4 members. Is that organized committee under our school policy number 5, section 6 committees? Where members shall be appointed by the president who shall serve as an ex officio member on all committees and appoint the superintendent as an ex officio member of all committees. Is that where that was organized?
I believe so, yes.
Does it also follow that committee, that the member may refuse or request to appoint themselves to that committee?
Yes.
Excellent. And would that be then also saying that each, let me just read this right, each board committee shall be convened by a chairperson, which apparently I believe you have yourself as the chairperson for this meeting, right? Okay. Who shall report for the committee and prepare minutes of open committee meetings and shall be appointed by the president. Is that correct?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Mr. Schwab, is he correct in his assertion that this committee is formed under section 6 of our policy organization number 5? I have it in front of me if you'd like to.
I have it in front of me as well.
Good.
And
So it's not an ad hoc committee. This is an actual committee
for any open meetings, yes.
for any open meetings, and the Negotiation and Personnel Committee, right, meets on an as-needed basis, and each board committee shall be convened by a chairperson, which is Mr. Stern,
Yes.
who shall report for the committee and prepare minutes of open committee meetings and be appointed by the president.
Yes.
Okay, so since they've had meetings, are they just not open meetings?
My understanding, and I've attended negotiation meetings where they're negotiating with the union, and under Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board, we have to do that in private. Okay, they're not an open meeting where the public can observe the negotiations or the demands. Personnel is similar to that. It's normally, in my understanding, has been held for strictly individual matters dealing with individual employees, not policy or procedure. I said, again, that's not an open meeting, that's an executive session.
Are they advertised at all?
I don't believe the negotiations or personnel committees have ever been advertised, because you don't normally advertise when you're negotiating with the union. It's not an open meeting for that.
So how do the members know that they have this meeting?
Frequently, it's reported in an executive session of the board as a whole.
So these committee meetings by the personnel and/or negotiations are executive sessions.
Yes,
Are board members, all 9 board members, invited to participate and observe?
that would create a problem. And normally, other board members other than less than 5 should attend.
So you're going to have a meeting of a policy or personnel or negotiations, right? I'm sorry, personnel or negotiations. You're going to have a meeting of less than a majority of the board.
Yes,
They're going to meet in private.
yes,
They are not going to follow section 6 committees because they're going to consider themselves not open committee meetings, but closed committee meetings.
that is correct.
And no other board members are allowed to participate for fear that you would then have a quorum.
Well, that would be what my concern would be.
Correct. And you're going to
Okay.
call this meeting of 4 people an executive session.
Well, it is under the labor law, Mr. Bradley.
Okay.
You
And then,
can't negotiate with the union out in public.
correct. And those members that go to this executive session then attend the next regular scheduled board meeting,
Yes,
and they announce that they had a meeting in executive session
that's not.
to discuss negotiations
I don't believe that's accurate. They would announce at the next open meeting of negotiations, but there never are open meetings, so it never gets announced. Only the board announces its executive sessions, not the committees. The committees would announce it at a committee meeting. If your budget meeting decides to go and have an executive session, for whatever reason, okay, at the next advertised budget meeting, they should announce they were in executive session.
Exactly right. But every one of these is an executive session, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, and then secondly, this board of 9 have a right to take recommendations from committees, correct?
It's a recommendation, it's not binding on the board, nothing is binding.
Completely right. And those recommendations are made in the minutes when it says we're gonna hire this person or fire this person.
I can't tell you, I don't know that.
We're on the agenda, I apologize. On the
I don't
agenda?
know how
Okay,
it's
so
put on the agenda.
let me make sure I take this clearly. If the agenda of our meeting shows for hiring and firing and the recommendations thereof, it would be a result of these committee members making a recommendation to the board. Is that correct?
Right, but just for clarification, the personnel committee does not, we talked about this last week, does not all go through every hiring.
I understand that, but they do make recommendations. It says on the agenda, it has been recommended.
But it's not, I don't want people to think that every recommendation hired has gone through personnel committee.
Correct, we agree with that. But when a recommendation is on the agenda, that recommendation is made by the personnel committee, correct?
No.
Who's that recommendation made by?
That recommendation will be made by myself, superintendent.
So the committee members didn't get to recommend?
No.
Okay. And then one more question. Make sure I get this straight. So, a board member cannot act for the benefit of the entire board, is that correct?
That statement is so wide open.
I know, I'll find
I
it.
can't answer that question.
Too easy, thank you.
Ms. Bose?
Is he done? No, I have nothing to say.
Okay.
I'm looking at Mr. Turner or Mr. Schwab, maybe you can help me. I'm looking for something in our policy that says an individual of this board cannot act on behalf of the board without the board approval. Where would that be in our policy?
I don't believe that's in the policy where, as you phrased it, there's nothing in there that prohibits a member of the board to act on behalf of the other board members in our policy. It's not there. It's silent.
So an individual board member has the authority to act as the board as a whole?
Didn't say that either. What I said to you, it's silent. You asked what policy? It's not in the policy, it's silent.
Is it in school code?
School code silent to that as well. I'll give you a prime example. We have a storm in January, we have a foot of snow. You can't have a board meeting to cancel the snow. Normally, that's an inherent policy of the practice and decision of the board president based on historical practice and the superintendent for the safety of the residents coming out. That would be a prime example of something where the board president or superintendent canceled something without consulting the rest of the board.
Does the board president get involved in those decisions?
They have in the past, I don't know if they have recently.
Mr. Turner, have you been involved in any of those decisions?
We've never had a canceled meeting other than.
No. He said snow days for the school or snow days for?
No, for board meetings.
For board meetings.
But snow days for the school, the superintendent does all
The
that.
superintendent does that.
And then snow days indicate that when a snow day occurs on a board meeting, that date, the board will be passed.
Correct.
That is not in policy either, though. That's just been the practice and custom of the district, that if the district's closed, the board meetings are canceled.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no further comment,